Hello and welcome to today's video. So this time we'll be taking a look at the Beatles Story in Liverpool. And we started the day, it was a bit of a rainy morning. And before we went into the Beatles Story, we took a Beatles tour. City sights, Liverpool. Very, very entertaining. Take you around all the Beatles sites. The highlight being the stop at Penny Lane, actually playing Penny Lane, driving along Penny Lane. And you stop at Strawberry Field as well. Very, very good. Then back to the harbour area there. Lots of shops, cafes, bars, restaurants. Quite a nice place to have a little wander around. And that's where the Beatles Story is. The museum, you could call it. And there it is there, the Beatles Story. You can't miss it. And you go down some steps and then you're in. So that's what welcomes you. Sort of based on the animated show, I think, those ones. And the way it works, you have an audio tour. So once you've paid, you have an audio tour and you work your way around and you have a little handset and you just sort of press, there we are, you sort of press the button, the number for the bit of the exhibition that you're actually at. And it tells the story of the Beatles in a chronological manner, right from when they first met up and started. Now, in Liverpool, you've got the Beatles Story and you've got the Beatles Museum, which is in the Cavern Quarter, they call it, which is near where the Cavern Club used to be. And I have also visited the Beatles Museum, so look for that at the end. I'll put a link to that one at the end of this video, and you can compare the two and find out which one I actually thought was best. In actual fact, I actually think this one was the best of the two. And I'll go through some of the reasons why as we go along. But this was really interesting. This was nice. This was obviously the days of the Quarrymen and the first meeting between John and Paul. And what I particularly like about the Beatles Story, and this is possibly because they've got a bit more room to spread out, is that they've been able to recreate some of the actual sort of buildings and rooms and streets, as it were, very similar to how they would have been back in the day. The Beatles Museum doesn't really have the room to do that. It is more a traditional museum with display cases. So this is moving on to their early time in Hamburg. As you can see, this is the brickwork, little John Lennon into the background there. It's really, really nice. And you've still got the historic artifacts as you walk around. I think that's a copy of My Bonnie with Tony Sheridan, early, there we are, yeah, their first single. And some of the bits, like that poster, I'm not sure if that one's actually original. Some of the bits are recreated, but there's an awful lot of original memorabilia here as well. It's an early demo of Love Me Do. Not many of those around, I wouldn't have thought. And as I said, certain things are really nice in display cases. That's a signed copy of Love Me Do. It's signed on the label by a couple of the band there, George there and John Lennon in the middle. And you will see lots of the studio shots and that. Now, this is interesting. This is the early days of the Mersey Beat magazine and how that helped promote all the Liverpool bands, really. But obviously the Beatles were a big part of that. And this is all original memorabilia. Copies of the Mersey Beat, Music Echo there. This is the Mersey Beat office, or a recreation of it. What it would have been like in the early 60s there, 62, 63 time. Was it Bill Harry was the editor? What a time to be in Liverpool, eh? Of a certain age, fantastic. And quite a nice little faithful recreation there. This is the a little showcasing of the guitars and some of the other instruments that were bought from the local Liverpool music shop. There we are, Hesse, Frank Hesse. And then after the Casbah came the Cavern. I said the original Cavern is no longer standing, but it has sort of been recreated as a club in the Cavern Quarter, as they call it now in Liverpool. And this is their recreation. This is sort of down, you go downstairs into this bit, into the Cavern. It gives you a sort of feeling of what it would have been like. And this is when the original Cavern actually closed for good. So bits and pieces of original memorabilia. The section on Brian Epstein was particularly nice, I thought. It was well done from his early days, having his record shop. Wrote the book, of course, The Cellar Full of Noise, which is a great read. Yeah, the NEMS in Liverpool. That was the record shop. And that's quite nice. There's a little statue there, and then behind him you'll see that rack full of original vinyl. Lots of signed records and letters and contracts framed up and dotted around. I think the museum does take the odd donation of special items. That's Brian Epstein's cashmere coat. You can almost see him in it, can't you? Yeah. There's a signed title page of his book. That's the hardback. And they got the old sound booths there. I had to dive in and take a photo. Moving on to recording now in Abbey Road and a little bit on George Martin. They do sort of show the early origins of George Martin, working with people like Peter Sellers, Spike Milligan. An example of a sound booth where they'd be set up to record. I said, and one of the things with the Beatles Story, they got a lot more space to spread out. That's what it looked like to me. A 10-inch 78 acetate there. That's worth a few pounds. And some original lyrics there. So George Martin's detailed handwritten recording notes. Now that's quite interesting. That's a signed Beatles album, and it's rare because it's been signed on the front in ballpoint pen, but you can't really see the signatures. And that little sign says that most of the time signed Beatles albums are signed on the back because it was not the non-glossy side, as it were. Which makes sense. This section here is on Beatlemania. Certainly my mum remembers going to see the Beatles. Now, this is a little hint of what's to come, really. So, unlike the Beatles Museum, which you'd think would be full of this sort of memorabilia and merchandise, it's not, and there's far more of it in the Beatles Story. This was to, I think, one of the fan club founders, Bernadette. She's got lots of signed bits and pieces, including that signed handbag. But this is nice period stuff, you know, a Beatles wig there with the header card, you know, the little miniature pendants and guitars and things like that. Loads of fan club memorabilia. I mean, that is around, in all honesty, but it's still nice to see it. And then that leads into the Beatles heading off to conquer America. Another key part. They've got a little first-class seating area there, which you can sit in. And there they go on the Pan Am, that famous shot of them arriving. Was it in Washington, I believe? Here we are. This is the Beatles tour schedule for 1964. They're ready to go around the world. Obviously the famous Ed Sullivan appearance. This was also a really good bit. The famous Yesterday and Today jacket with some various proofs and different variations of it that I'd never seen before. That was excellent. That was really good. And those appeared to me to be all originals. They weren't like scans or anything. They were the original things. Yeah, very nice. Here's another cabinet with Beatles memorabilia, Beatles costume, tray, the hairbrush there, Beatle brush. Bob and Head Beatles. Some nice stuff there. Those are, I think those are lampshades. Here they are on the Ed Sullivan Show. They got to know Ed really well. Obviously the place has got the odd arrangement of instruments. Yeah, that was used in Free as a Bird. Strawberry Field, incidentally, when you go and visit it, the actual gate itself has been removed. And the one at Strawberry Field is a replica, but it's in the right location. And as I said, on the tour, you know, driving along Penny Lane to the sound of Penny Lane, the song was really quite a special moment. It's the famous Sgt. Pepper cover, and it shows you who's who. Not quite recreated exactly faithfully, but it's a pretty good job. And if you wanted to know who everyone was, there's a little guide. And the Yellow Submarine awaits. Another part of the tour. We've got the Magical Mystery Tour, of course, first. So that's virtually, it's like a miniature version of the coach, really, which is quite nice. And an alternate cover there to Sgt. Pepper. That was good. That was the original Mr. Kite basis for the song, of course, for the benefit of Mr. Kite. Recreations of the original costumes. It's not the originals, but they are copies from, I think, 2000. Yeah, Noel Howard made the replicas in 2000. A bit more about Magical Mystery Tour. Some of the facts and figures about its making and when it was shown on the BBC, how much things cost, that sort of stuff. Didn't know the BBC had paid £9,000 to show the film. I believe it was on Christmas Day, and it didn't exactly go down that well. That leads into the Yellow Submarine, and they've got, you know, what would be a bit of a submarine in there, and it's a great experience. Certainly felt like the Yellow Submarine. A little bit of Beatles everywhere, and even in those portholes up ahead, there's some fish swimming around. So it's got a little aquarium in there, which wouldn't be out of place in the film. A little cabinet of Beatles Yellow Submarine memorabilia, some old, some new. A Lego set there, some stamps. I noticed the little Hot Wheel that only came out like last year, so it's fairly up to date. They probably sold them in the shop, and when we get to the shop at the end, it is absolutely insane. It's perhaps the best Beatles shop I've ever seen. It's really, really good, which we will have a look at in a minute. Now we're leading up to the end of the group, certainly as a group, leading up to the rooftop tour. That was really good. That was a blue vinyl pressing of the White Album. It was done specifically for one chap at the pressing plant, so it's virtually unique. Quite nice to see those, the old reel-to-reel. Lennon's books, they're not in particularly nice condition, but they're copies. More bits of memorabilia there. That's all original tickets and things like that. Very, very nice. None of that is copied or photocopied or replicated. It's the real thing. Signed page there again. A lot of this stuff has been donated by long-time fans, people who knew the Beatles. And this is real proper memorabilia, and it's great to see. Now the separation. The Beatles split. Then it looks at what the Beatles did as their solo careers. So Ringo, of course, had his all-star band. Simon Kirke there, my best man's uncle is Simon Kirke. Hello, Alexis, if you're watching this one. So yeah, it focuses this part on what the Beatles did after the band split up. And, well, Ringo had quite a career, didn't he? He was in a few films and did lots of solo albums. And look at all those awards. And they do a similar thing for all the Beatles in their solo careers. And this area here is quite a bit more open. You can sort of go your own direction. Bed for peace. This is announcing the sad news by telegram that John Lennon had been shot dead. In fact, I remember that moment very well in 1980. So sad. There's quite a focus on John's last year or so in New York. Great photos. And of course, obviously I can't do the actual music, but throughout the exhibition, you'll hear the sights and sounds of the Beatles and the Beatles music. It really does suck you in. Some of the people John met, rock and roll royalty. There's Andy Warhol there. There's Elton John. Yeah, good little section this of the final sort of year or so of Lennon's life. And this bit's particularly good because they're playing the Imagine song. It's a recreation of the famous room where he sat at the piano. Quite a poignant moment in the entire tour for me, this. It really was quite something. Now a little bit, which seems a little bit out of place because it's not chronologically correct. So I don't know if this is something that's been added fairly recently, but this is when the Beatles went to visit the Maharishi in India. And you hear the Beatles sort of talking about it in the background. It was just as I think they were on their way when Brian Epstein died, and that's where they went. Yep, George's relationship with Ravi Shankar. Then this sort of leads into the start of the store now, which, as I said, is really quite something. I mean, it really is. I've never seen anything quite like it, and I'm a Beatles fan, and I've seen a lot of great displays, but this is really something. So pretty much anything that's in print on vinyl, or CD, Blu-ray, is in stock, and it's in stock in this store in depth. There's a whole bookcase full of all the books about the Beatles that are in print. You see box sets, limited editions, every little scrap of merchandise, and it's beautifully presented, as you can see. Lovely little display cases for the more expensive items. And, well, the amount of Yellow Submarine stuff is absolutely mind-blowing. But I think they've done such a good job here presenting this. This is really, really well done. As you can see, I mean, the amount of t-shirts and hats and caps and dressing gowns, scarves, socks. Absolutely mind-blowing to see it all together. It's all official merchandise. A lot of it's got Apple logos on, Apple Core. Really, really is quite something. Yeah, and I've not seen the Beatles ukuleles before. And acres of Yellow Submarine merchandise. I bought a little pack lunch bag, cool bag for work. I'll be the envy of my workplace, I'm sure, with that one. But yeah, it truly was an incredible visit. Now, I visited in March 2023. It was £19 per adult, which I believe is very good value, particularly if you're into the Beatles. And as we'll see towards the end of the video in a moment, right outside, literally just a stone's throw away, is the famous Beatles statue, which you want to go and get your photo taken with the slightly larger than life 4 statues of the Beatles. But if you ask me, this was the highlight of the Beatles tour. This and going along Penny Lane, it was really, really something. The Beatles Museum is a bit different because it's a lot of it is the collection of Neil Aspinall, and they approached the Beatles story in a slightly different way. There's a lot of Pete Best's memorabilia and his brother's memorabilia as well. And as I said, I shall link to that one in the video end credits here. So as soon as that one's complete, you'll be able to click on it and compare the two. And we also visit the dedicated Beatles shop once again in the Cavern Quarter. But there you are. I hope that's been informative and will help you make up your mind. If you're thinking about visiting, I would definitely recommend it. It truly was a fantastic place to visit. So if you have enjoyed today's video, do please give the video a thumbs up. Do hit that subscribe button if you've not already for regular vintage retro content. And I shall look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.